Good morning and welcome back to day 2 of the Business of Beauty Global Forum, live from Napa Valley, California. I'm Priya Rao, Executive Editor of the Business of Beauty, and this morning we're going to go inside the industry, meeting the founders, creators, and executives succeeding against the odds. I want everyone to welcome people on our live stream all around the world. Please introduce yourselves in the chat window and let us know where you're joining from today. Please share your photos, screenshots, and favorite moments using the hashtag BOFBeauty. As we learned from the State of Fashion Beauty report yesterday, industry growth is cooling. Beauty brands are having to work harder than ever to convince shoppers that little luxuries are necessary and additives to their wallet. The expectations of customers are running high, incredibly high, which you all know. So how can brands find growth opportunities? And what does real value look like? And how should the beauty industry change their roadmap? Our speakers in this morning's session will answer all of these questions and more, revealing their challenges and their playbooks. Our first speaker has a case study we can all learn from. For over 20 years, e.l.f. has turned the proposition of beauty on its head. With its scrappiness and agility, its speed to market is unparalleled, with a nonstop slate of big, buzzy marketing campaigns and products to match. All of this has been made possible through the work of its team, primarily its chief executive, Tarang Amin, who is here with us today. He's experiencing all of the issues that you all are here in the room are too: tariffs, inflation, a slowdown, but still bucking the odds. And we're so happy to have Tarang here with us today. Please welcome him to the Global Forum stage.
Good morning. It's a pleasure for me to be here today. Thank you, Priya, Imran, and the team for having me on this stage. It's quite an honor. But I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, what the heck is keep the e.l.f. up? Right? Now, I know Priya is also worried. My style is quite visual. I have a lot of slides. She doesn't think I can nail this presentation in 15 minutes. But I'm going to ask you to trust me.
In e.l.f. we trust.
Over the next 14 minutes and 40 seconds, I'm going to take you on our journey of what we mean by keep the e.l.f. up. But first, a little background on myself. I'm of Indian ethnicity, born in East Africa. Ever since I was a child, I love watching wildlife. Every morning in Africa, a gazelle wakes up, and it knows it must outrun the fastest lion or it will be eaten. Every morning, a lion wakes up, and it knows it must outrun the slowest gazelle or it will starve. Now, the point of this story is it doesn't matter if you're a lion or a gazelle. When the sun comes up, you better start running. Now, my family immigrated to the US when I was a child. And like many immigrants, you had to move fast or perish. So I put on a suit and got ready to run. This is proof of my immigrant roots. It's me in the second grade, the only kid in a suit and tie. They didn't even know what to do with me. They just put me off to the side. Right? Now, I'm happy to report by the third grade, I was better integrated in. Right? Still the only kid in a suit and tie, ready to run. Right? Now, the way we rose, like many immigrants, is as entrepreneurs. So when I was 14 years old, we sold our house, took every penny we had, and we bought our first motel on Route 1 in Alexandria, Virginia. Our business model is we'd find these distressed properties, we'd fix them up, and we're good operators. This is a signpost of that very first property. But there was a sense of urgency. You see, it was 1979. Every penny we had was leveraged in this property, and interest rates were more than 18%. So at the age of 14, I developed an intuitive sense of cash flow. Every dollar coming in, every dollar going out. I also knew what economic profit was more than a decade earlier than when I actually got the definition. But most importantly, it's where I honed this combination of speed and heart. I knew as an owner the power of treating your employees well so they could better serve your customers. I also learned the power of resiliency, because when you run fast, you're going to get knocked down. And boy, I've been knocked down a lot. But you pick yourself up, you dust yourself off, and you keep running. Because if you don't, that lion will eat you for breakfast. Right? Now, I took many of these entrepreneurial skills to scale big brands in big companies and do it fast. At Procter & Gamble, the Pantene brand had existed for 50 years, yet it only amassed $50 million in annual sales. Over the course of 8 years, I was part of the team that transformed that business into a $2 billion global market leader, a 40-fold increase. At the Clorox Company, the namesake Clorox brand had existed for 100 years and was focused on hardcore cleaning. But over a 4-year period, we transformed that business to health and wellness, giving 50 million kids in America a healthier childhood and their parents peace of mind. In the process, we doubled that franchise from about $750 million to $1.5 billion. At Shift Nutrition, my first public company CEO role, we grew enterprise value from $180 million to $1.5 billion in less than 2 years. As I said, I like to move fast. Right? Now that background perfectly suited me to come to e.l.f. because e.l.f. was a bold disruptor. e.l.f. got its start selling premium cosmetics for $1 over the internet in 2004. Everyone thought the founders were crazy. This is pre-iPhone. You can sell cosmetics over the internet, and you certainly couldn't make money at $1. But that spirit of disruption is very much part of our DNA today. 21 years later, we're still doing things very differently. We're the only public beauty company headquartered in Oakland, California. By the way, that's our glamorous headquarter building right there. It's an old cigar factory. Our vision is to create a different kind of beauty company. For that matter, a different kind of company, period. We do that by building brands that disrupt norms, shape culture, and connect communities through positivity, accessibility, and inclusivity. This is the kind of energy we bring every day. We're a 21-year-old startup that's agile, nimble, with a bias for action. Renegade spirit, bias for action, and we operate in real time, something we call e.l.f. Speed. Now, in the 11.5 years I've been CEO, we've taken net sales from about $100 million to over $1.3 billion. But more importantly, we've grown shareholder value from $135 million to $7 billion, a 50-fold increase. I appreciate the clapping, but it's going to get in the way of my timing, so we'll keep it going. Now, if you want to blast off to new frontiers and build a different kind of company, you need a different kind of rocket fuel. And I'm going to give you that recipe right now. It's a combination of our passionate team of owners, high-performance team culture, democratizing access, and disruptive engagement model. The most durable advantage we have is our passionate team of owners. See, I learned the power back from my motel days of ownership. It's one of the reasons why we grant equity to every single employee every year, everywhere around the world. And if you exclude the named executive officers, since our IPO, we've granted $220 million of equity in a stock that's gone up 7-fold for meaningful wealth creation for every single member of our team. Now, that passionate team of owners is driven by a high-performance team culture. You know, I'm often perplexed, this polarized day we live in, how you have to somehow choose between being inclusive or having better performance. We're living proof that both go hand in hand. Right? Now, we've never had a DEI program, quotas, or some of the things that are being attacked because it's more fundamental to who we are. We strongly believe that if your team reflects the community that you serve, it's a competitive advantage. Our team is 74% women, 76% Gen Z and millennial, 44% diverse. They absolutely reflect the team that we serve. But it's not enough to have a diverse team. We also train every single employee on high-performance teamwork, how you develop passionate relationships, how you give pinpointed specific feedback real time in the spirit of helping the team succeed, and how you draw strong mutual accountability. And that results in incredible employee engagement. We've also been on every best workplace list there is. But don't take my word for it. These are the words our employees use to describe e.l.f. We create the cultural conditions necessary for innovation to thrive. We seek out each person's unique superpowers because in a diverse team, If each person is leveraging their strengths, the entire team is stronger. Now that high-performance team is absolutely passionate about democratizing access. We democratize access on multiple dimensions. In beauty, our mission is to make the best of beauty accessible to every eye, lip, and face. After all, 2/3 of consumers around the world live paycheck to paycheck. We don't think you should have to choose between a high-quality cosmetic and a carton of eggs. Right? If you bought one of our Halo Glow liquid filters, you'd save $35 relative to Prestige. If you added a Power Grip primer, you'd save another $28. Throw in one of our lip oils, you save another $32. And our bronzing drops would save you another $26. I need glasses, by the way, I can't read my screens in there, but I know you save a lot of money, right? Now, happiness is having these 4 incredible e.l.f. products in your makeup bag. But true joy is taking the $121 you just saved and putting it back in your wallet. Because after all, $121 goes a long way for most consumers. And with e.l.f., there's zero compromise. In fact, our community often tells us they prefer the e.l.f. product relative to the Prestige inspiration. And we're highly transparent with our community. Like many of you, we're facing real headwinds with tariffs. But we announced a $1 price increase, and we do that directly to our community. Right? We don't try to pull one over on anyone. And our community appreciates it. 98% positive sentiment of this is why I buy e.l.f. You're always upfront with me. You're always transparent with me. Now, there's also zero distance between our C-suite and our community. In fact, I actually gave Michaela my CEO title for a day, and she crushed it with our community. But what also happens is Corey Marchesotto, our CMO, absolutely terrorizes me from time to time by dragging me onto TikTok Live. And she'll start with something as simple as like, hey guys, you got the boss man here, tell him what you want, right? The chat will light up. Last year, it lit up with, hey, there's this Prestige bronzing drops, we love it, but we can't afford $38. Help us out, e.l.f. And I'll look at the chat and I'm like, yeah, okay, you want bronzing drops. And then there'll be like another 100 texts after that, which is like, no, boss man, we want them now, right? Like I said, I will leave that TikTok traumatized, but I'll call up my head of innovation and say, oh, please tell me we have bronzing drops in our pipeline. She goes, yes, we do. I'm like, thank God. When are they? She's like, 18 months from now. I'm like, oh, no. I cannot get on another one of those TikTok lives and have our community scream at me. So we pulled it up and launched them within 6 months. But it's not just me. Corey also takes our CFO, Mandy Fields, our head of sales, Jenny Lar, on these TikTok lives, reducing that distance to zero. Not that I'm competitive, but I just heard that Corey and Jenny's last TikTok actually got more views than mine, right? So I'm going to cheat. Michaela, I'd like to invite you next time I get on TikTok. We also democratize access to our board of directors and the highest seats of power. In fact, we're one of only 5 public consumer companies out of 4,000 that has a board that's 67% women and 44% diverse. And we use our platform for societal good. Our Change the Board Game initiative serves up facts with Billie Jean King, does provocative campaigns, publishes a not-so-white paper actually showing the correlation between board diversity and performance. And we're also sponsoring 40 members of color and women through NACD Accelerate program, qualifying them for public board service. The insight behind our So Many Dicks campaign is quite simple. There are more men named Richard, Rick, or Dick on America's public corporate boards than entire populations of people. Right? Now, there's nothing wrong with being a Richard, Rick, or Dick. There might even be a couple in here. We just want to make room for others and use our platform to empower others. Now, our focus on democratizing access directly leads to our overall consumer engagement model. We know how to engage and entertain our community. Whether it's music, long-form video, sports, anything else, we basically know how to engage our community, right? And the speed of execution equals the speed of learning. These are just a few of the campaigns we did this year. In every one, we learned what our community is resonating to, what we're going to double down to, how do we please and entertain them even better. So there you have it. That's the recipe of a different kind of rocket fuel. And I'm happy to share it with you. I want you to be able to use this recipe, because if you do, you may defy gravity. Right? We're powered by our ethos. Our ethos powers our purpose. Our purpose powers our people. Our people power our performance, and our performance enables the possibilities. We love to say, anything is elfing possible. Now, we just reported our 25th consecutive quarter of net sales and market share gains. Right? We're one of only 6 public consumer companies out of 546 to be able to grow net sales 25 straight quarters, averaging at least 20% sales growth. We're also the only cosmetics brand out of 1,000 that's been able to grow market share for 25 consecutive quarters. And that's really enabled. I mean, actually, if I think about it, all of you know how hard it is to scale brands in our space. There's 1,900 cosmetics and skincare brands tracked by Nielsen alone on the mass side. So I'm very proud that e.l.f. Skin and Naturium have more than 100, or one of only 26 that have more than 100 million in retail sales. And e.l.f. Cosmetics is one of only 4 with more than $850 million of retail sales. And that's enabled by our multi-generational appeal. e.l.f. is by far the most favorite brand amongst teens, 3.5 times the next highest brand. But it's not just a Gen Z favorite. We're also the most purchased brand by Gen Alpha and millennials. We're now the #1 unit share brand in the US by a wide margin. This is across mass and prestige. In fact, e.l.f. is in 1 of every 3 US households, up 400 basis points last year. There are more e.l.f. products than any other brand in the beauty space in people's hands. We're also the #2 dollar share brand with clear line of sight of outright market leadership. Now, I told you I've been CEO 11.5 years. Every time I get a new candidate, I tell them, oh my God, you're joining us at the exact right moment because we're just getting started. Right? And I fundamentally believe that. We know, or we believe, in the next few years, in the next coming years, we can more than double our penetration of color cosmetics, skincare, and international. So there you have it. I gave you what we mean by keep the e.l.f. up, and I want you to have it. I want you to replicate it. I want everyone in this room to be successful, to have strong growth, to realize your ambitions and aspirations. But of course, what's on your mind is what the e.l.f. is next. Right? Well, I'm very proud of our growing portfolio of brands that are complementary yet distinct. Every one of our brands grew last year. We love supporting the visions of our founders. I'm so happy that Susan Yara is here. We love supporting her vision on Naturium. And each of our founders, would be Alicia Keys, we founders of Well People, we'd like to keep and make sure that we're actually supporting our founders' vision and to be able to enable that. Of course, I couldn't be more excited to welcome Haley and Rhode, the Rhode team, to the e.l.f. Beauty family. Now, the program says I'm going to come back on at the end of the day with Haley, but I want that to be her time to shine. She's done an incredible job. She's way more than a celebrity. She's one of the most thoughtful founders I've met, similar to Susan, with incredible instinct, a beautiful aesthetic, and astounding success. And I couldn't be more excited to welcome her to us, and I want you to hear from her directly. All right, so there you have it. Jump in the rocket ship with us and keep the e.l.f. up. Right? Now, I got to tell you, I absolutely nailed the timing on this. Right? So I feel as happy as my grandson Rian does right now. Thank you.
Now, Tarang is 1 minute and 46 seconds over, but I have to keep him. I do have to keep him up here for a few more minutes.
I blame the applause. I really do.
I know it's y'all's fault. Tarang, we have to ask. We talked about this a lot yesterday about beauty slowdown, about kind of the restraint of customers' wallets, and while e.l.f. has had 25 consecutive quarters of growth, it was a little bit slower this last quarter. Can you talk about what you're thinking about, how you're combating that as you go into the next quarter and the next year?
Sure. So I'd say, look, we're all facing the headwinds that we're seeing in terms of consumer sentiment, fears on inflation, tariffs, and the volatility that we have there. I go all the way back to our approach is always to pivot when others are doing things. I go back to the pandemic, right? In the pandemic, we saw a lot of our peers start to lay off people, cut their marketing budgets, stop their product innovation. We did the exact opposite. We made a commitment to our team. We're going to get through this together. We doubled down on our marketing and doubled down on our innovation, and that's enabled the 25 consecutive quarters. So you're going to continue to see us disrupt. I think this would be a terrible time to basically say we're going to retreat. Because I'm fundamentally optimistic of our space. Beauty is just one of the best categories there is. The absolute need for people to express themselves, the love of innovation, of new ideas. And so that's where you're going to continue to see us. You're going to continue to see us follow this recipe of continue to disrupt, continue to engage, and entertain our community.
I know we teased Rhode a little bit and that Haley will be with us later today. And we've spoken at length about this, but what do you think her addition to the e.l.f. portfolio is going to mean? You know, I can't even imagine what the excitement in the room is there. And what you think that she's going to be adding besides the Gen Z love, besides the color, cosmetic growth, like what is it?
You know, we're always attracted by like-minded disruptors. You see it in a lot of our brand collaborations, you see it in our brand portfolio, and we love nothing better than to support a founder's vision. And so she's an absolute disruptor. I mean, taking a business from 0 to 212 million in less than 3 years, direct to consumer only with only 10 products, we haven't seen that. And she said they're just getting started. Right? They're going to have a big launch with Sephora this fall in all US doors and Canadian doors, followed by the UK. So we see massive potential for the brand. And our approach is different than a lot of our peers. We don't like to over-integrate a brand. We're going to take that entire team. Haley, her co-founders, Nick Vlahos, the entire team. And our approach is, how can we help you? How can we help enhance your vision, make sure that you're realizing your vision? And so we have very high hopes, and I'm glad you have her on the stage later today.
Thank you so much, Tarang.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. We often hear that men aren't interested in beauty, that they want the women in their lives to choose the products for them, and they won't ever buy more than the basics. And yet, countless challenger brands seek to upend that notion and the belief that men can and will shop for beauty ferociously. Here to talk to us about the men's beauty opportunity is Marc Turlet, founder of French grooming brand Horus, and John Ludique, the Senior Vice President of Marketing for Dr. Squatch, in conversation with BOF's Brendan Kilbane. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Gentlemen, thank you for being here. And speaking of gentlemen, as our topic is today, we were talking about this backstage. The men's beauty is in the title of this panel, but that doesn't seem to be a agreed upon term for this category when it comes to men. Do you guys have any feelings about this when you talk about it, you know, amongst yourselves or talk to your customers? Is it men's beauty, grooming? What do we call it?
We call Horus men's grooming fragrance because, as I said to you earlier in backstage, like as a men's brand, we are dealing with fragile masculinity of heterosexual men. So the whole point is always to find the right balance between you know, showing them a drag queen and showing them an MMA fighter, but which is something we do at our house. We can do both. And but the truth is, when I talk about it with the team, we talk that we are in the men's market rather than the beauty market, because I want them to frame that we need to behave as men expect us, rather than what you expect from a beauty brand.
Right. What about for Dr. Squatch?
Yeah, similar to Mark, I mean, we focus on the terms men's grooming or men's personal care. I think beauty is not really what men use to describe themselves very often. So even though it's a similar category of products, the terminology and the phrasing might feel a bit foreign. And I think what we found is, from a marketing perspective and positioning, developing the sense of closeness and talking to men in their own language is the best way to do it.
Yeah, let's call it like men's handsome or something.
Yeah, men's confidence.
Yeah, something like that.
Men's
Confidence.
handsome.
Yeah.
Men's debonair, for a French word. Yeah.
When it comes to personal care, grooming, or whatever you want to call it, how do you guys, how do men approach the category? What are they looking for in these products?
Yeah, do you want to start, Mark? You want me to?
I mean, us, it's really like they are looking, but I think it's true for women as well. Like, people want efficacy and a good price for efficacy. And for men, because most are really newbies into the category, especially for us, because most of the business is skincare and fragrance. Like, you have to be very simple. So a face cleanser is called a purifying face cleanser. It's like, it does what it does. And the whole point is just making sure that they get, you know, what it does. I'm saying that again, but the whole point is really, really that.
Yeah, similar for us. I mean, we find that men in general are first looking for functionality and efficacy. And if the product doesn't work, they're not going to buy it again. Right. But what we've also been seeing is that I think like guys haven't really been spoken to that much by the industry as a whole. And they've been treated as kind of a monolithic group of people that don't really care or don't invest much time and energy into the category. So I think where we've had a lot of success is actually treating them as a unique audience and an audience with specific needs and specific desires that might actually be different than what people assume. And so by finding ways to connect with them in a meaningful way, it allows you, once you get beyond the functionality and the efficacy, to deliver a brand and products that connect with them at an emotional level, at a psychographic level, which is what people are really looking for these days.
Is there a price component as well? Because I feel like men, like even like Horace, the products are high quality, but it's a pretty accessible price point for what you're getting. Do men not want to pay a lot of money for personal care?
I mean, I remember like having a conversation with someone that has like a really high-paying jobs, and he was telling me that, like, the product he used for shaving, and it's Gillette. And the whole point was like I was talking again and again with like a lot of men, and they were like, they don't want to pay that much. But I think it's now like also a broader appeal. Is like people are very aware of what is the real price of a product, and health was like a very good example of that, and many brands are a very good example of that. And people just expect a very good value for money, and they want brand to deliver that consistently.
Yeah, same for us. I mean, our flagship product, still outselling everything else, is an $8 bar soap. We have #1 dollar velocities at Target, at Walmart, at most of the major retailers in the U.S. with an $8 bar soap, which is significantly more expensive than a normal six-pack that most people would generally buy. And so what we found is that men are willing to pay more if they see there being a reason to pay more, but they're not willing to necessarily pay more, at a mainstream level, just because of the brand or because of the label. You have to do things a little bit differently. But for us, I mean, price points, we play, I think, at a slightly lower level than Horace. So we're more kind of in the prestige range. But people are definitely willing to trade up, especially these days when they're looking for more out of their personal care products.
And when it comes to shopping, I want to talk about how men shop for beauty products. Priya mentioned this, and I also heard a rumor once from somebody in beauty who said that most of the products that are marketed to men are purchased by women or purchased by significant others. I love that you guys are up here because it feels like you're speaking to very different segments of the same kind of men's monolith, but I'm curious, has that been true for you in how men shop? John, do you want to start?
Yeah, for us, it depends mostly on the channel. Okay. And I think when you look at, we have a very strong e-commerce business. We were initially a D2C company and built that for years. I think we're still the #1, men's kind of D2C beauty, grooming, personal care brand. Most of the consumption from our D2C channel is guys buying for themselves. But at retail, we launched end of 2021 initially. It completely flipped. Yeah. So most of the buying actually comes from women who are buying for partners, for kids, for the household. And so the approach had to change quite a bit because you're speaking to slightly different audiences, and the motivations behind that might change. I think what we found is similar to how kids might nag their parents for a box of cereal with a cartoon on it. We also are able to kind of lever the male nag factor. So even though maybe someone else is buying for me, I can convince them to buy what I want them to buy. Has been a really effective approach.
The male nag factor.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So I use that a lot myself.
Yeah.
On our end, it's very, very different. I mean, 85% of clients are male directly. They buy for them, and the whole point for us is how we can make men buy skincare, beard care, fragrance for themselves, because at the end of the day, they are the end user. And we are doing something that everyone wishes they want to, is finally cracking men's skincare. And we've been doing that in France. I mean, we're the #1 men's skincare brand, and it's because we find ways to make sure that they want to buy it for themselves, which goes back to making sure that it's efficient, they get what they do, and we do a lot of tutorials and how to, but the whole point is just like, you have money, you had the right to use your money before women had, so, go to your store and get your own product. It's not your wife or significant other to do that for you. And you know what you want, and that's the whole thing. It's like we are focused on solving problems, and the truth is like you are the one who knows what you need, and the whole point is that, and it's true with whether it's on e-commerce, in our stores, in pharmacies, everywhere. It's just men buying for them.
Yeah. And Marc, I want to ask you a little bit more about that, because Horace is direct-to-consumer, but also has retail spaces, correct? Has that changed how your message penetrates with men?
No, It's really, really, really the same. The whole point is like we're a brand where you can get anything you want to look good and smell good. So this is why we have like deodorant. We also have like shower gel that you have in your gift bag, and it smells good. And we have fragrance, we have skincare, and the more we grow, it's always the same pattern of men feel that it's finally okay to take care of themselves and use products they never thought they could use because they just don't know it existed. Right. Because, going back to what you say, it's like the industry is so focused on thinking men want harsh products, that they don't want to use skincare, that they will never use a concealer or whatever. The truth is they are way more open to use product than what we usually think. They just don't know about it.
Have you thought about any bigger retailers that could amplify that message?
We are at Monoprix in France. We are in pharmacies. We are in talks with others. And the whole point is like we have stores. We have like 17 stores in France, soon 19. We have 1 store in London. The truth is, if we want to be accessible, which is one of the main things at Horace, we will need to have partners that can help us go deeper and further, because we can have like 6 stores in Paris, but we cannot have like a store in Nottingham in the UK. We cannot have like a store in Atlanta in the US. So we need partners that have like the same mindset of we want to change the way people buy skincare and buy fragrance and buy beard care, and like we need to build partnerships.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk about marketing to men, and I want to ask you, John, I feel like Dr. Squatch has killed it in marketing. It's really, it's a great brand for reaching men, and you guys have minted your own mascots in the past. You've also had celebrities, Sydney Sweeney recently, I don't know if you guys saw, infused her bath water into a bar soap, and I understand that is a bestseller.
Sold out in less than 1 minute.
Oh, yeah. That is crazy.
Pretty crazy.
Tell me, who sells well to men in your experience?
What we found is that I think guys kind of have their own language sometimes, and it's really important to understand your customer at a deep level. The morning breakfast session, there's a lot of conversation around using things besides demographic data to understand your customer. We spend a lot of time, and I know, Marc, you were saying this, just talking with people and finding out where does the white space exist. And I tell my team pretty often it's more about reading the tea leaves of culture and trying to figure out where are people headed, what's going to be important a year from now or 2 years from now, and starting to not dilute your brand or to change your brand, but to position yourself to really be on top of where the trends are going to be headed. And so what we found is that using a variety of partners, using a variety of content is the most effective. I think if you, especially at our size now, when you're trying to go after a much wider audience base, you can't rely on small niches to be successful. And so how do you start to combine different subcultures, or how do you really start to play at a more kind of mainstream level to win becomes really important. Then I think the other thing that we found is people just have very short attention spans these days. And so for you to be successful, most people, maybe they don't care about your story. And so how do you figure out what is their personal narrative and what will they focus on and what do they care about? And how can you play within that space? Especially in men's, I think is even more critical because historically, you know, at least in the area that we play in, it's been very low emotion. Most guys just haven't really cared. And so how can you get them to pay attention and to focus? A lot of times it's by doing things that are going to be a bit more disruptive and a bit more out there so you can capture people's attention. And then once you have the attention, you can use the attention to communicate something that's really important. And so we focus on kind of, you know, disruptive, like highly engaging marketing, because then once we get your focus, we can talk to you about the benefits of natural products, the benefits of using skincare, the benefits of using, you know, full hair care routine. And you trust and believe in us more, A, because you're paying attention, but B, because you feel a closeness with the brand. And I think, you know, the beauty industry historically, I think for men at least, can be pretty intimidating. And I think for a lot of guys, you feel uncomfortable, you're not sure what to buy, you're not sure how to really use the products. And so by communicating with men at a level that they understand can be really impactful in terms of driving growth. And on the marketing side, it also just gives you a lot better content to work with. It gives you much better creative that you can use in ad campaigns that is much stickier and much more effective. And so the whole flywheel starts to work on itself.
Yeah. And taking that connection a little bit deeper, tell me a little bit about how you guys build community with this customer base, because it feels like community is so important for beauty brands. I'm not sure how you wrangle men.
And first thing is like we answer every comment people put on social media. We answer every emails. We basically handle 300 to 400 communication per day, just like from guys, you know, asking questions, saying like, anything, and then it's a lot of me connecting with people. So I do a lot of community events in store, and for example, we just launched a fragrance called Vetiver Primavera, which is our biggest launch yet. And I went in store, and like half of the session was like, let me introduce you about the fragrance, and the other half of the question was just like, fire question about what's next. Like, when is this product coming? I need that. Do you have this? But like, people want to be heard. That's like people want to be seen, and communities is really about that. It's like you want to connect, and a lot of brands forget that social media is about engagement. It's not about reach. It's not about, you know, so you need to follow people. You need to engage with them, and like we spend a lot of time just doing that.
Yeah, engagement over reach. Yeah. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think a lot of brands, you feel like you're talking down to somebody, but it's not the right way to do it. And I think it's also worth talking about what is a real community. Within a brand, a lot of people say, oh, we have a great community because you have maybe a lot of social followers, but I don't know if that's really community. I think community, to Mark's point, is talking with, engaging with people. It's listening. It's showing them that you're listening. It's launching products based on what they tell you they want. It's responding to issues based on what they tell you the issues are. But then it's also allowing them an environment where they can kind of connect and share the love and share the enthusiasm. And what we found is really helpful because as they get more excited about the brand and the products, it helps fuel your business as well because they're sharing with their friends. And if you tell me about something, it's going to be way more impactful for me than if a brand tells me about something. And so community done well, you know, I think to Mark's point, like where there's actual back and forth, can really become something that allows for much more exponential growth.
Yeah. Nice. I want to ask you guys one of my favorite questions, which is, and I know that from your brands, you cover skincare, fragrance, body care, men's makeup. I feel like we're always ready for it to take off. It's always next year, like, you know, the men's makeup is going to go mainstream. There's going to be that great men's line, and then it never happens. How close are we?
I think we are very, very close. I mean, we have like a product called the Healthy Glow Fluid, which is basically a bronzer, which is one of the best-selling products in the US and in the UK. And like, we call it tinted skincare because, again, like dealing with fragile masculinity of heterosexual men. I'm an heterosexual man. I know what I'm talking about. But I have a very good example. At some point, we launched like an under eye cream, which is one of the best sellers. And like guys came and said like, this is nice, but I want something that works instantly. Yeah. And the whole thing was like, okay, so it's makeup. Yeah. Because the only thing that works instantly for your under eye is that. And so we launched it. It's not as big like an under eye moisturizer, but the work was just like showing them pictures of before and after, and they started buying it. And I remember like being at one of our Parisian stores a couple of months ago, and I was with a journalist, and like the journalist was coming exactly for the same question as you have, and he was like, have you ever buy men's makeup? So to a client, it was like, no, but I just didn't know it existed. And Horace showed me it existed, and I understand what the product is doing, so I'm gonna give it a try because it actually works.
Yeah. Nice, imminently.
Yeah,
Wait.
it's now.
Yeah, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Now let's talk about the importance of staying power. It's never been easier to start a brand, but building a brand that can go the distance, withstand shifts in trend cycles, and consistently stay connected to the customer is much harder. You all know this. Prestige skincare brand Tatcha has done just that. Here to talk to us about its approach to brand building, Nicole Ferrucci, Global Chief Marketing Officer of Tatcha, Christopher Skinner, Chief Revenue Officer at Brand Accelerator Front Row, is in conversation with BOF's Alice Jividen. Please welcome to the Global Forum stage.
Hi, everyone.
Hi, good morning. Thank you both so much, Christopher and Nicole, for being here with us. We're excited. Tatcha is now a 15-year-old brand. It has major global distribution partners. It has hero products under its belt as well. And of course, a very impressive acquisition by Unilever Prestige back in 2019. But over the past year, the two of you have worked together to evolve the Tatcha brand. And it's that inflection point for the business that I would really like to start with. So Nicole, let's come to you first. What were the market shifts that signaled to you that this was the time to take stock of Tatcha, look at how you were doing business, and think about this idea of strategic reinvention?
Yeah, first, thank you so much, Alice, for having us here. It's an honor to be here, as well as working with Chris at Front Row. But really, I joined Tatcha about a year ago, and when I joined, with the CEO, of course, and the rest of the executive team, we really evaluated both the greater macro market, what was happening in beauty from the deceleration of skincare. We knew that we needed to sharpen our edge. Then, of course, dupe culture, which isn't going anywhere, and that's okay. We just needed to ensure that we were protecting our product, as well as elevating our total brand experience. And then for us, it was personal because we had so much growth that we were looking forward to in the years ahead. So it was about a time of scale. We were moving from an exclusive relationship with Sephora into multi-retail channels. We were broadening our distribution and continuing to look at our global footprint. So what that meant was more teams, more functions, more markets, all touching the brand. Yeah. And with more people touching the brand, we really needed to get down to the roots and ensure that we had cohesion and consistency across all global touch points.
Christopher, you and I talk a lot, and I'm always curious about your vantage point, your view over the industry. So why did this moment, this strategic reinvention, make sense for Tatcha from perhaps a commercial perspective? Why now? What was there to gain?
So Alice knows me really well, and she called me and she actually told me this question, and I said, I don't like that word commercial. It just is so terrifying. Because you imagine like data and reports and sales and all of this sort of stuff, and she refused to take the question out, which really made me like reflect. And ultimately, this story came out, and ultimately it was a 25-year-old Christopher Skinner working at Space NK Apothecary in the Green Street basement with Nikki Kennard, and this young lady walks in, and she puts down her first and only product, these beautiful blotting papers inspired by Japanese gold leaf artisans. Yep. And that was then used and repurposed by Japanese geishas because of the oil and mattifying and blotting properties. And obviously I'm speaking about Vicky, I'm speaking about the origins of Tatcha. And while the brand has evolved quite a lot, obviously, from the blotting paper, 15 years is a long time. And brands are like pencils, right? Yeah. You don't necessarily need to throw the pencil away. Ultimately, decisions and changes in leadership just slowly kind of dull the pencil down. And it takes bravery, if you recall those sort of manual sharpeners in class, to stand up up in front of everyone, walk over, put it in, and start to sharpen. And ultimately, that's what we did.
Yeah.
And what I really believe is that commercial strategy and brand strategy are about perspective. It's about having a unique point of view. And ultimately, that is what we needed to kind of get back to.
I want to understand a little bit about what that looks like in practice. It is no small thing, I think, to be trusted with a brand DNA for a project like this. How did you approach reworking the Tatcha blueprint? Where did you start?
I mean, I think blueprint is the right question, right? And there's sort of like a how and a what. We have a lot of founders and executives and entrepreneurs in the room, myself being one of them, and I can say, and perhaps you feel, I am very anxious. Like, always like things in my head, people are giving me ideas, opinions, this is working, but then at the same time, this is not working. And ultimately, for me personally, to make a decision, the best thing to do is sort of be quiet, to be still, to sort of remove myself from the noise. And that's what we did. Because every brand at its core has a spirit or a DNA or whatever house you come from and belief system. And we had to kind of get to that spirit. And ultimately, what we landed on was this idea of intentional disruption, right? The initial story that I told with Vicky, there's an intentionality to Vicky and to Tatcha. And disruption doesn't necessarily mean loudness.
Yeah.
It really means focused consistency. And that really became our spirit, which we then sort of evolved into a purpose. And ultimately, we all have spirits and energy unto ourselves, but to invite others to join us in that, you need to create a purpose, and a purpose truly needs to be an invitation, and Nicole's going to speak to that.
Yeah, let's talk about purpose, because Nicole, when you and I caught up last week, we said how when a business makes a concerted effort to rethink its brand, it needs to land with customers, we know that, but you need that organizational buy-in. That's something that's really important. So how has this work helped to build cohesion within Tatcha? What does that look like?
Yeah, so when you have a founder who has an incredible vision, and there are many founders here, I think Mariana spoke about it yesterday. There's this intuition, there's this gut, and there's this vision that you have. You have the teams that are then following you. We had that with Vicky for close to 15 years. She's still an advisor on the brand and has been a part of this work. But what we found is that people want to be a part of something that's larger than themselves. And purpose became that thread that united the team. So when we were doing this work, it wasn't about changing the purpose just for change's sake. It really became about going to the roots of what that purpose meant and what we wanted to then transcend for the next 15 years. So the original purpose, which was to reawaken beauty from skin to soul, we really thought about that and what it meant. And for us, it was really came down to the emotional territory of self-love. That began with the founder story with Vicky experiencing burnout on Wall Street, which then turned into her skin. She had eczema, psoriasis, etc. That showed up on her skin. So for us, it was about how can we provide that stillness, but really go down to this emotional territory of self-love. So our new purpose is to inspire self-love as a quiet, lasting revolution. We believe that self-love is a daily practice. It's a part of your ritual. We like to say that we bookend people's day, both morning and evening. And for us, when you have that self-love, it then is that ripple effect that you bring out into the world. So for us, it became our North Star in everything we do, from creative to culture to organizational onboarding. When we have new employees, we really rally everyone around this North Star of our new purpose.
Can you tell me a bit about how that shows up actually in creative? What does that look like?
Incredible. After we did the strategic framework, we really we started building additional campaigns. And our first campaign with the new purpose is Moisture That Makes You Feel. And what that was about reframing skincare to emotional care. Because what we want to do is really connect consumers to something bigger than just our products, but to our brand, to experience a shift in themselves. So while, of course, product efficacy is so important, especially in a competitive market where everyone is talking about claims and clinicals and what their products can do, we wanted to go beyond that. So we looked at our full funnel, a full 360 campaign, and starting in the top of the funnel, we really put our dollars into CTV, digital video, with a broader message that was really about emotionally grounding the product. We leaned into the sensorial textures that we know people love from our brand. And then, of course, down the funnel, we, of course, drove more of the performance with product marketing, but it all laddered back up. So what that really showed is that it united the creative team, the brand team, and the performance team, and it showed that resonance and results can exist together.
I'm glad you talked about these channels, because one thing that I know you're obsessed with, Christopher, is this idea of a unified strategy. We talk about omnichannel. There are conversations around the swing or the pendulum between brand and performance, but you're obsessed with this unification. What does that actually mean? Why is it so key?
I mean, I think one of the biggest vulnerabilities that a brand can have is that they have sort of story and soul in one part, and then sales and strategy in another part, and they sort of work separately. And I think we've all paid for PDFs that just sit on a desktop and we never see again. And ultimately, that is the detriment of brands. I believe, and Front Row was really built around this philosophy of connected commerce. Long gone is sort of this omni-channel strategy where we have, one distribution channel, one distribution channel, one distribution channel with individual teams and individual budgets and individual tactics. And now that's sort of a stacked strategy, almost like a pinball machine. And ultimately, the consumer, is discovering, validating, and converting across multiple channels all at the same time. And so connected commerce means that every single aspect of the brand has to work in concert with one another, which means your teams need to work in concert with one another, and brand equity building and brand strategy needs to work in concert with execution. And ultimately, it just means more from every touch point.
Before we close, I did want to talk about the kind of cultural foundations of the brand, because from speaking to you both, this is something that's very important. Nicole, I'd come to you first. Those roots or those foundations in Japanese philosophy, how important is that over the next 15 years of Tatcha?
It's everything. Japanese culture, or Japan, is not just the location or a pillar of our DNA. It is the strategic framework for our brand. It is the point of difference. It's what differentiates us as a brand. So it's the luxury craftsmanship where we make our products and we craft our products at our Tatcha Institute in Tokyo. It is about the art of Japanese beauty rituals that we bring to the experience with our clients. It's the intentionality of all of the decisions that we make for the brand. It's that slowing down. It's also ingrained in our culture at Tatcha as an organization. One of our values is omotenashi care, which is really about selfless hospitality and the service that we provide to both our clients as well as our partners. But ultimately, that's just the internal piece of the brand. I think what you're also talking about is culture as the zeitgeist.
Yeah.
And for us, we really think about that as another way. We really try to find the places where we can play. We've identified 3 culture pillars as a part of our brand, one being mindfulness, one being culinary, one being craftsmanship and artistry. Those are key elements of our brand that we look at as where we can play. But I think that there are other elements, right? Right now, there are bag charms that are having a moment. In our next campaign, we're launching, we created a character together. That character, Jiyu-chan, who's on our social right now, this little bunny, he's from Tokyo. His name is Jiyu-chan. He has a whole story that's grounded in Japanese culture. He will be a bag charm. He will be our character for our next campaign, but that is where we find places where we can play and bring something unique and different, but grounded in Tatcha, grounded in Japan, that puts us in the moment, but also is really inherent to the brand.
I think Nicole has touched on something quite interesting, Christopher, which is this, I don't want to say the word tension, but maybe this nuance or this balance between navigating a brand DNA and those cultural foundations and moving through culture and responding to the zeitgeist. Balancing those things, I think, can be tricky. What advice would you give more broadly to brands in the room that find themselves at a similar juncture to Tatcha?
I don't know how many homeowners we have here, but I'm not here to sell a house, I promise. But my partner and I invested in a 1799 farmhouse in Connecticut a few years ago. Total nightmare, don't do it. But what I can tell you for those that sort of embark on historic homes is you love the history. You love the story. You love what it stands for. And you can feel the history in the space. I think the same is said for a heritage brand, right? And you buy a historic home or you work with a heritage brand because you're not afraid of respecting that history. But you also understand that for it to have value today, it needs to have commodities or it needs to connect to the consumer's need for today. And that ultimately is a 1 + 1 = 3. If you can sort of understand and get to the spirit and DNA of that brand and its history, respect and understand what the consumer is looking for today, that ultimately adds value. And so I would say for everyone in the room, you know, we can tend to look outward quite a lot, right? We're all answering to a million people and we're all getting advice from a million different directions. I would urge you to get quiet, and what better place to do it than Stanley Ranch? I would urge you to get quiet and really understand the soul and understand why you do what you do, and then be brave in your execution. We don't need playbooks. We need brands that have imagination, that have innovation, and that are really here to do it differently while respecting the needs of today's consumer.
I love a house renovation analogy, and I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you both, Christopher and Nicole, so much.
Thank you, everybody.
Appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Today, a mere mention from the right influencer can otherwise turn a sleepy brand or a sleepy product into a viral sensation. But influencers don't always find the same successes in their own brands. Incubators and investors are sometimes reluctant to partner with them, fearing that their popularity is ephemeral, making a long-term investment risky. But when influencers have a clear market and a loyal fan base, they can become some of the most well-informed beauty founders, leveraging the direct insight they have into their customers' wants and needs. To share their strategies in brand building, please join me in welcoming two of the biggest influencers at different stages of their brand journeys. Susan Yara, founder of skincare brand Naturium, and Michaela Noguera, who recently launched Point of View Beauty. And Susan's already making content from the stage.
Gotta do it.
We're so happy to have you both here and so excited. I know so many people in the audience are excited to hear from you. But, you know, I'd love to start at the beginning. The word influencer has not been long for this world. You know, people didn't even know this could be a career. For both of you, when did you think that you could start making content that could actually become something more?
Oh, I can go. Michaela gave me the look like it's your turn.
You're the
You know, I started off in a similar place as you, Priya. I was a journalist. I started off in hard news in New York City. Then I went into business news for Forbes magazine when it was truly an authority. And we went into the digital era, which sounds really funny. And I know that it really ages me, but when we got into the digital era, it was a little bit embarrassing. We were testing things out, testing out video. And so I started off in digital content creation almost 2 decades ago. I was like 23 years old, 24 years old when I started that. And it's been a really fun journey. And when I decided to leave journalism, when I had finally become a beauty editor, I knew that being a content creator was going to be a real job. It wasn't going to be a hobby. This was going to be something that I really pursued.
What about for you, Michaela?
My story is not as cool. So I began creating content when I was 12. I started a blog and a YouTube channel. By the age of 14, I had 60,000 subscribers on my blog. And when I entered high school, I entered a business competition where I pitched essentially being an influencer to a panel of judges. And I got a lot of strange looks for sure. But I ended up winning the competition. And then I pitched it nationally. I was trying to prove that you could do this as a career. And I was only 16 at the time. And then when I entered college, I decided to start doing TikTok, and that's when it really blew up for me.
Talk to me about TikTok, because, I mean, it was in the midst of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. You were this girl from Boston. You were not from New York, not from LA. You had a different aesthetic, but
Definitely.
You were everywhere. I mean, were you expecting that? Like, what happened?
No, I was not expecting that. So I was a senior in college when the pandemic hit. I was working at Ulta Beauty, and I was preparing to graduate and enter the workforce. I was going to work for a major corporation in human resources, But then COVID hit, and everything at once happened to me. I lost my job at Ulta Beauty. My graduate program completely shut down and still has not opened up today. And then I lost my job offer for my full-time position after college, and I felt absolutely lost. And so I decided I have so much free time, I'm gonna make a TikTok. And I made my account. The first video I ever filmed changed my entire life. And I do believe that that was meant to happen to me. Timing is everything.
Will you describe that video for the audience, for those who didn't see it?
Sure. So the video, at the time, I suffered with severe cystic acne on my face. And I think that is something that drew people into me right away, is I was super transparent about my skin. And the video was essentially me showing a before and after of a dramatic makeup transformation. And I was able to show people how you can use makeup to feel confident and beautiful. And yeah, it totally changed my life.
Susan, transparency has been a big key for you as well. You know, I think from the beginning, I know now we talk about gatekeeping as if it's some sort of special word, but Susan was doing this from the beginning. And I think you also had an ability to talk about your family, talk about your background, you know, being mixed race, you know, you weren't afraid to talk about those topics while also talking about beauty. How did you have that permission or confidence to do that?
I think it's always in you. Like from the start, you're that kind of a person that's an open book and you want to share these kinds of things. I love relating to people. For instance, you know, this morning with the Glam Squad, a woman named Rachel walked up to me. She's like, I learned I watched all your baby videos and connected with you, and then I started buying Naturium. And I just feel like it's really great to be able to connect with your community. And I think what we've seen over time, because when I started off, influencer wasn't even a term, right? Like there wasn't this abundance of sponsorships. So we were just trying to figure things out. And when you start to realize that you've got this community, you can start building these, you know, these inside jokes. For instance, I'm going through a divorce right now, so I've shared this online. And so I've started, you know, being a little bit more carefree. I put up some swimsuit videos. And you know, people were outraged because they saw my butt, you know, like at the back of my butt. And so my community kind of rallied around that, and they were like, you know, now it's like a joke. It's like my butt's gonna become my entire online personality. And it's, you know, you'll see these comments and stuff, and you realize that these are the things that we're connecting on. We're evolving together. We became moms together. We're going through divorces together, or hopefully not going through divorces, but learning what you should, you know, try to avoid to not deal with that.
We haven't quite talked about beauty yet. You know, I feel like both of you have seen a million products, been shilling products for forever. What gave you the confidence to say, hey, I can do this on my own, and maybe I have a different perspective to add? Susan, you want to start first?
Yeah, so I started off with skincare education. I talked about cosmetic treatments from the start, skincare education, and then started to really get an idea of what products and what retailers my audience was shopping at and what they were buying. I tell people this all the time. When you're a content creator, you have access to analytics, and that is one of the most important things that you should be accessing. Not just your engagement and looking at, you know, how you can grow your following, but what are people buying? What are they interested in? Whenever people come up to me and they're like, I want to start a brand, I'm an influencer. I'm like, well, what's your audience buying? And half the time, they're like, oh, I don't know. Like their idea is just completely different from what they sell. And so I think that you should always go back to your analytics. Your audience will tell you what they want.
And what about you, Michaela? I feel like you just started Point of View, and you started with skincare first, which I think was for people observing, thought that was totally from left field.
I think that's interesting because I made Point of View for my community. So to an outside person looking in, they may see me launch Skin Prep and question it. Because if you look at me, I always have a full beat. I do these crazy eyeshadow looks, full coverage, everything. Why am I launching Skin Prep? But if you're truly part of my community, you know how often and how important I preach, how important you have to do skin prep with your makeup. And I talk about it in almost every single tutorial I do. And that is why I launched it first, because if I'm building a beauty brand, I knew that I could not build something until I began with the root of your routine, which is skin prep.
But you're launching makeup, right?
Oh, she said first. I caught that word, I clocked it.
You heard it here first. Makeup is coming soon.
Makeup is absolutely coming. It would be a disservice to me and my community if I didn't do makeup.
I would love to talk a little bit about how you guys got here, because of course you have incredible gut, you have that founder passion, but you also aren't doing it alone. You know, obviously, Susan, you're part of the Elf family. You were part of the Center family before this. Michaela, you have some great investors. It seems like you guys knew early on that operators and finding the right team was important. Will you start, Michaela, with that?
I was approached by many investors, venture capital, everything you can imagine for years, wanting me to build a brand. And there were many times we would meet, we would talk, but if it didn't feel perfect, if it didn't feel right, it was an absolute no. But when I was approached by Imaginary, what I really appreciated about them is they understood influencer culture, and they understood that I had a very strong vision, and that I needed to, as a creative, bring that vision to life. And them providing me that investment, they gave us the full creative freedom to do whatever we wanted, which was amazing. The designers we worked with, they let me have full control of the packaging design. It was very important to me to be able to go to Korea to have these formulas made, and they allowed me to go to Korea. I didn't want to have those restrictions, and I loved that they just gave me full control, essentially.
That's very unusual, though, right? Susan, what about for you? I mean, you've been on either sides of it now with Elf, and then also with the center before that.
Well, I think one of the most important things you can learn as a founder is to know what your actual talent is, right? I think growing up, I always thought I want to be the CEO of a company, a huge company. And now I'm like, no, why would I want to do that? Tarang is amazing at that. That is his job, right? I am not an operator, and I realize that. And so when I approached Ben Bennett, who was my investor in Naturium, that was one of the first things that he asked me. He's like, do you want to be the CEO? And I was like, no. And he was like, great, this is going to work really well. Because it gives you the opportunity to really focus on what you do well. And what I do well is innovation and marketing. And so I get to really focus on that. Don't get me wrong, in the beginning of a brand, you have to learn every aspect of it. You have to deal with the cash flow problems. You have to deal with, management and being an inspiring leader. But now I'm on this other side of it where I really get to focus on what I do best, and that will help your brand thrive.
Both of you also have dealt with some controversy in your influencer careers and also your brand journeys. I think, Michaela, we know about Mascaragate, or most of you know about Mascaragate. And Susan, you just revealed that you were going through an FTC investigation at the beginning of starting your career. Mm-hmm. How do you guys deal with such intense scrutiny, from all sides, while also trying to build, credibility in this industry?
Well, I think something a lot of people don't realize about influencer brands specifically is that we are the brands held to the absolute highest of standard. We are held to higher standards than the most prestige brands like La Mer, Augustinius Bader, Sicily. We're held to higher standards than that. We're held to higher standards than traditional founder brands where it's just founded by, say, a makeup artist or a hairstylist. We're held to standards because when you build a parasocial relationship with your community, they see you as a friend. Mm-hmm. And the most important thing in friendship is trust and honesty. So when you launch a brand to your community who you've built this relationship with, they are putting their full trust in you for this launch. Mm-hmm. Specifically when it comes to your ingredients, your marketing, your community building, everything you do is under a very, very fine microscope, which is a blessing and a curse because as a new brand, for instance, it gives you a minimal amount of grace to make mistakes. Mm-hmm. And it's a positive thing because it allows you to make the necessary changes, adjustments, and fixes to your brand at a quick pace because you get called out immediately for it. So I appreciate it at the end of the day.
What about for you, Susan?
I think when first off, if you're not being talked about, you're not it, right? So I think it's important to know that whenever people start to draw up controversy about you, that means that you're worth talking about, you're living rent-free in their minds, and that's a good thing as long as you're not an actual terrible person. I think that when you start to look deeper at controversies online, it's almost never your actual community. They rally behind you, right? It's usually people that are on the perimeter or don't even know who you are, who really want to draw up this controversy. And when you start to separate it and you really pay attention and focus on your community and the people that support you, then you're really getting something beneficial from it.
Like the FTC, they're a little bit outside.
Well, they're a little, yeah, you don't want to do that, trust me. Every brand, make sure you're tagging everything, getting all your influencers to add all of that stuff. But yeah, it's not fun, but yeah, when you look back on it, you can learn a lot from it. And by the way, it's not just influencers. Every founder in here is or has gone through some kind of controversy at this point because we're online. So you have to learn how to leverage it and learn from it and speak to your community.
Why do you think that influencer brands, and I mean, I put you guys in the celebrity bucket too, get such a bad rap? I mean, there's been so few exits, so many have failed, so many, and I think Melissa Butler said this the other day. I mean, maybe they were just bad operators, right? Yeah. But why do you think that there's so much hype at the beginning and then kind of such a free-for-all at the end?
Yeah. First off, we're entrepreneurs. We're just people that have followings. So just like any other founder, we can be good or we can be bad at it. But there's something to also know about influencers. There are EMV drivers and there are sellers. And the sellers are rare. I think for sellers, I know this from my analytics, I'm sure Michaela knows it too. When you can actually sell product, then you have a better chance of really having a brand because that is what your followers follow you for. They want to know about products. They want to know what you recommend and why you recommend that. But if you're just an EMV driver and then you just launch a brand, what does that do for that community? It just surprises them and they're just kind of like, what are you offering that's different?
What about you, Michaela?
I think when you're an influencer and you choose to create a brand, you have a responsibility to not create the brand for yourself, but to create the brand for the community. So I have a bond and relationship with my community, and I know exactly what my community is needing, what is the white space, and you have to listen to that. So when we created Point of View, I created that line based off of what I consistently heard from my community, which is that main liner, why does my makeup always look like shit? And my answer to that is, well, what are you doing to prep your skin? What are you doing to ensure that your makeup's going to lay beautifully on your skin? And then the follow-up to that is always nothing. Or I don't know. I don't know how to layer things. I don't know what products work well together. I don't know if it's gonna pill, if it's gonna get cakey. I just don't know. People just don't know. And I took all that feedback and I created Point of View based off of that. So I think you can agree that when you really hear your community and you create something for them rather than something for yourself.
Yeah, and they know it. They know it too. Like for years I talked about how eye creams are just kind of moisturizers in a jar, and they are. And so we launched eye cream, and my community immediately was like, oh, this woman, like launching an eye cream. But when you explain it to them, I was never lying about that. Like it's a moisturizer, but it's made specifically for the eye area when we think about how we formulate it, what we're doing, what benefits you want to get. So I think when you're talking to your community and you tell them why you created it, then it's good.
Do you feel like when you're going into different categories, obviously skincare for you, and you've moved into body, do you feel like the customer and the community is willing to go there with you? Because I think in beauty generally, when you see a skincare brand launch makeup or vice versa, it's kind of like, what am I gonna do this with them?
Yeah, body care was one of the best moves we ever did, right? We went back and forth on this. Is this gonna be too soon for us? We're still a baby brand. But what we looked at when we were looking at the market, we were kind of like, it's kind of crazy that we only buy body wash for the scent, right? What about all the body skin issues? Everyone's dealing with stuff like this, like bumps on their skin, redness, acne, all of these things. So why not do what we did with serums, for instance, and do it with body wash? And it was a huge hit for us, and I'm so happy we did it because our body category, I think, it's setting the tone for body skincare across the industry.
And Michaela, obviously you just spoke about skincare, but do you feel like that there are other categories that you can play in besides makeup?
Yeah, I think I'm someone who shares my entire life. So for instance, I just moved into a new home and I've shared every single step of that process. And I foresee being able to launch something, say a fragrance. If I wanted to come out with a point of view fragrance one day, I think it would be a big hit. I think merch. I'm someone who loves, jewelry and cool phone cases and accessorizing, and those are all things I would love to be able to do with point of view, and have point of view head to toe. I think that's really cool to be able to expand, and I think my audience would follow.
We've talked a lot about community in this conversation, and we've talked about it throughout, I think, the sessions earlier today and yesterday. But community is such an overused word, and I think it's kind of losing its meaning. I'm wondering, are your customers your community, or are you finding that your customers are much bigger than your community?
I would say much bigger. When we started, we were a D2C brand, right? But we have now become a bigger brand than that, right? Our retailers now make up a good portion, if not the majority, of our revenue. Sorry, guys, sometimes I don't know what I'm allowed to say since we're publicly traded.
Okay.
He's saying that's okay. I got the thumbs up. Anyway, I think that it's really important to not just group everybody into one community, but now we have several different communities, and they all have different shopping habits. They're all different kinds of people with different lifestyles, and they're looking for different things. So we offer an array of products to fit those different needs.
Michaela, what about you?
I think for me, transparently, I do believe that presently our community is who is buying the products. And I think as a new brand founder, as a new brand, it's our job now to build that scale and grow. And we do that through the UGC and just getting it out there, what point of view is, and all our future launches and everything like that, and making the brand much bigger than community, but also growing our community along the way. You know what I mean?
My last question for you guys is around authenticity. I know we talked about it personally, but a lot of founders out there and a lot of influencers out there are only talking, what a sponsored post is, and when there's a shop my link at the bottom. And I'm wondering, are you still mixing and feel comfortable mixing other brands, other trends in your content? Because I think that's what makes you good marketers and probably better sellers.
Yeah, I mean, from day one, when I was speaking with Ben Bennett about joining him and the Center team, it was one of the first things that came up. I speak about other brands. I try other brands. It is what my community comes to me for. I think that, they were smart. Ben is very, very intelligent, obviously. And he was like, yep, I think you need to keep doing exactly what you're doing. And then same thing with the e.l.f. team. So smart. They know what it is that you do, and they embrace it. And so I think if you're looking at brand founders wanting to invest, you should embrace what that content creator, that influencer brings to the table.
Michaela, do you have anything to add?
When I was first approached by the investors, my one requirement to becoming a founder was that I will always be a content creator first. I never want to put founder above content creator, because a content creator is who I am, and it's the reason I am able to be a founder. And that requires me to talk about thousands of brands. And my community really appreciates that, and I see that in my comment section. I just did a video, it was a sponsored post the other day with a Korean skincare brand. I have Korean-inspired skin prep products. And the comment sentiment was actually, I so appreciate that you're still using other brands you love. It wasn't, how dare you use another brand. So I think my audience actually really enjoys that I still am someone who's super passionate about product.
Can I respectfully interject? Yes. You're in the very start of the brand founder journey, and I guarantee you, a few years from now, as your brand continues to grow, you're going to say, I'm a founder and not a content creator.
We'll see. We'll see.
Thank you guys so much. It was so wonderful having you here.
Thank you.
I'm so happy you're here. I'm gonna let till people get into their seats a little bit more in the back. The higher a brand rises, the more precipitous a fall may seem. For Olaplex, a dizzying climb to a multi-billion-dollar IPO led to shakier ground when competitors began jostling for shelf space and distribution came under pressure. I've been trying to get Amanda Baldwin here to talk to us for a while, and Chief Executive Amanda Baldwin has been working steadily on Olaplex's next act. But she's not calling it a turnaround. She's calling it something else, a transformation. Please welcome Amanda to the Global Forum stage. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to see you. You sit there. Okay. Amanda, like I just said, I've been working on you for a couple of years to get here, and you've been in your role now about 1.5 years, right? Is that right? Mm-hmm. Tell me the story about you. You know, I think many people in the beauty industry, if you didn't know, Amanda started her career at Dior, was working at Clinique. You've always been known as a brand builder and a marketer. And I'm wondering, with Olaplex, we all saw the pandemic rise and then fall. Like, what did you see in the brand, and what did you see from a brand building perspective?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me, and a shout out to those in the audience who have been a part of my journey that we'll talk about. There's a few familiar faces that I'm very happy to see. You know, I do think of myself as a builder, first and foremost, and that I love change. I love a tall order. I love the opportunity to maybe see things that not everybody sees and figure out how to get a business, how to get a team to the places that they could only maybe dream of. And I really saw that in Olaplex. First and foremost, because the product is so incredible. I'm a big believer in start there. That if you do something that's innovative, that you have a product that truly works better, you can build anything around that. And so that was really important to me. I spent a lot of hours in our lab. It's one of my favorite places to be. When I first started, asking a question, then another question, I'm the farthest thing from a chemist, to really understand, well, what makes us so different? Why is it so impactful? And I think I started to really understand that. The second thing was I think I consider myself also an entrepreneur, and to try what that entrepreneurial journey would be on a much bigger global platform was really exciting. And to kind of think about what happens if you combine really that early stage mentality that's necessary when you have to change a lot with scale. Which is different than how my journey started at Supergoop, where it was, you know, I tell everyone we were 10 people sitting around a table. Equally fun, but also that you could change this, you could make this huge impact in 70 countries around the world. What would that feel like? And the last thing was a thesis about beauty, and I've been in this industry for 20 some odd years now, and saw a few things that I thought were really exciting about where's the white space. I love the white space. What's going to come next? And prestige hair, I think, is still very, very early in its journey. And one of the statistics that I love most is that if we think about the broader beauty market, about 47% of skincare, makeup, fragrance is sold in prestige. Right. Hair is closer to 20. Like, if you just think about that, that's a lot of opportunity. And if you have technology that really can shape and change outcomes and benefits to the consumer, maybe you have a real shot at shifting that category. And the other thing is this convergence, and I think McKinsey pointed out a little bit yesterday about health, wellness, longevity, where is that going? And so, again, I felt like our brand is really well positioned to take advantage of what I think are going to be some big changes that are coming our way.
When you think about that startup mentality, but also being a public company, how do you kind of navigate balancing those two? I mean, taking chances and risks is a little bit harder to do when you're public, right?
You know, I've always believed that building a great business is building a great business. That my job is really to think about the long term and be very nimble on how we're going to get there. And so I've really, I've been very upfront with my board, with the investors, with my own team that this is not going to be fast. It's not going to be linear. These kinds of journeys are not 1, 2, 3, poof, and here we go. And so just I think clarity and transparency about that is really important. And the reason I didn't want to be on this stage before now was because I couldn't talk about necessarily the things that we now have put out there about what's the vision for the business over time. And I think once you have that figured out, it's just about just keep going. The number one piece of advice that I'll give to any founder or builder in the room is relentless, just never give up. And I think if you kind of have that, you know where you're going, you're not going to give up, you will get there. And so that's really been how I'm thinking about this. And I think also a willingness to make the tough choices. We've been resetting our international business, and that's not a short-term fix. That means take a step backwards before you can go forwards. And fortunately, one of the things that Olaplex also has going for it is it's a very profitable, strong, cash-flowing business that we can actually make sometimes the choices that aren't going to be easy in the short run, but will pay dividends over the long run.
Around the global strategy, will you expand on that a little bit? Because obviously you're negotiating with new retailers and distribution networks.
Yeah, so one of the really interesting things about Olaplex is that it grew very quickly internationally. So about half of our business is international, which is very unusual for a business that's turning 11 this month. And it's been one of the great joys of my job to stamp my passport a lot and to see what it's like in all of these places. And I think hair is this incredibly, I fall in love with the category. People ask me, have there been any surprises? And I said, nope, I knew what I was getting into, but I had never knew how much I would love the hair category because it is so powerful in its global impact and how it kind of influences how people think about it. So really figuring out what is the opportunity for us internationally has been really important. We've definitely been more focused on our home market and getting everything set there and getting the marketing engine going here. But once we kind of really start to see some movement, I think we'll be able to replicate that well.
Talk to us about the brand building piece of it, because I think for those of you who have been paying attention, which I'm sure many of you have, there's been a lot of changes to Olaplex in terms of the way you look and feel, and even new products for different kinds of hair types. Like, what came first for you?
I think I think about the world through the lens of brand. And so for me, the first thing that I looked at was, what are we trying to say and how are we saying it? And I felt like we had this incredible story to tell. We have this really amazing product, but we didn't have a brand. And this was my own hunch, but we also went out and did a lot of research about where are we successful, where do we have opportunity. And it was in things as simple as what's the visual expression of what we say. And I'm sort of wired in a way that I didn't know how to move us forward, to come up with a strategy, to know what our product innovation calendar needed to look like without knowing what we were trying to express. And so I had a lot of fun in the beginning, really, again, spending a lot of time in the lab, but also spending a lot of time with our pros. And I would talk to, and I still, any hairstylist who will tell me about their story and their journey and where they come from. And what I found was that we had this alchemy of science and style that wasn't necessarily coming through, that the brand was very clinical and dare I say cold. And that's what the research said. And hair is not a cold category, right? Again, it's like this very emotional thing that really changes how you feel every day. I'm feeling very lucky to have had Glam Squad this morning, so shout out to them. And how could we capture that? So literally in a little over a year, we flipped every single image in this brand, and that's not a small feat. And to bring some life and emotion to the potion, so to speak, was really the mission of what I'll call phase one, which was just what do we look like. And then you've got to build on top of it, how are you expressing yourself in the upper funnel and what's the entire content that's engine that's driving all this. So we're working our way through all the pieces of the puzzle, but it definitely started with what's the DNA that we're trying to express and is it coming through?
I loved what you said just then. You said we had a great product, but we didn't have a brand. I would love for you to give some advice on that, because I think there are a lot of brands in the room and a lot of brands out there in the world that think they have a brand, but really they have a product. How did you even distill that?
So my theory is that if you can put your thumb over a logo and instantly know who's communicating that, again, we live in a very visual world and auditory world, then you have a brand. And I spent 5 years at LVMH, actually went to school for this to really understand what's brand DNA, what's codes, how does it come through. So I think that's really, you know it in your heart. I think it often comes from founders. And at Supergoop, I worked with a tremendous one who had her own vision that it was really my job to figure out how to make it real. This one was different. The founders aren't in the business any longer. So I've really looked to the pros as our founders and our scientists in the lab and what they're creating. And so we really want to live up to that. But I think it's the little spark, it's that little gut feeling. I think Carolyn talked about that on the stage, that you just know it when you see it. And I think somewhere along the line I developed an instinct for that.
Let's talk about hair specifically. I mean, the hair category, I mean, I'm also a big hair person. It's complicated. It's really complicated. I mean, the prestige care category is very new. I mean, largely you guys kind of invented it. And there's so many different networks. It's not D2C and retail. There's this professional network. And it's interesting that you're kind of leaning back into that, because I feel like a lot of other brands have kind of gone the Amazon, they've kind of pushed away from that. How important were the stylists and that distribution network in the marketing? Because I mean, I'm starting to see it, obviously. And I think Tracy Cunningham, what you did with the White Lotus, and get all those three blonde friends that looked alike. You know, I think like those things were things you weren't doing before.
Yeah, but Olaplex would not exist without the pro. And I think one of the things, if you haven't heard the story about how Olaplex actually started, it was this magical potion that was born in the lab, but it became real in the chair. It didn't have any meaning until Tracy Cunningham herself, she's an incredible inspiration for all of us, tested it out on some of her Hollywood red carpet stars, and really what Olaplex enables is the craft and the artistry of being a pro. That's really what the science does. And so in the most simple terms, if you're turning someone's hair from blonde to black to red to all these things and back again, without Olaplex, you can't do it. And one of the things that I've really loved about getting to know the pro is that they are artists first, and then often entrepreneurs and psychologists on top of that. But they really are artists, and to watch one of them, it's like watching a painter paint a canvas, and it's really, really extraordinary. And so really getting back to that, part of getting back to the brand and finding this sense of the DNA and the emotion was finding the pro again. It's why we put red into our color palette, was to really inspire and have the passion of the pro, to have a nod to the red carpet origins of the brand. And it's not just in how the brand looks. You're right. When we did our big first brand campaign, we put the pro and their client literally into the work. But that's just on the surface, right? It's really got to be, what are you doing for that community every day? And it really is a community. I've also, besides stamping the passport, been to a lot of hair shows, which if you haven't been to one, you're just, you haven't seen it all yet. And just such an incredible energy of this community, and it really is a community. And how can we support them in everything that we do? How do we educate? Olaplex is a complicated product. This is real science. Before this brand, because the product was so incredible, it just kind of grew so quickly that we now get to play catch up and build some of the educational tools and the things that really are needed to continue to scale the business. And last but not least, there is pressure on that community because people are going to salons less often than they were before. They color their hair in a different way. There's a lot longer hair if we look at this audience, the different kind of upkeep. And so how do we create other services that are going to give another reason for somebody to go to a salon? So we launched something last fall called Bond Shaper, which is completely different technology than the original Olaplex technology, that's specifically designed for waves, curls, and coils, because they work in a totally different way. And so you need different technology to really kind of harness their incredible beauty. And we're just about to launch a scalp treatment that's designed just for what happens in a salon and kind of the strains and stresses of what you can see, and how do we kind of really make sure we're supporting the scalp through that. So it's got to come in a lot of different ways, but I feel like it's my mission to do right by this community that Olaplex wouldn't exist without.
When we spoke on the phone, and it's in the title of this talk if you guys weren't paying attention. You said you weren't running a turnaround, you were running a transformation. Will you talk about that? Because I think so many people expect one thing and you're saying something totally different.
Yeah, I think it is a choice of a word that I think is turnaround. Somehow I just have this image of you're driving a car and then you're just going to turn around and go back the other direction. And I'm not really interested in going back in the other direction. I think that everything that happens to a brand along the way, the ups, the downs, everything, it's part of a journey. And so how do we think about going forward? What do we really want to build that I think does have to be rooted in our past, right? Everything that I've been talking about, I've spent a lot of time really trying to understand what has made this business so special and really reframe it. I think the world still sees Olaplex as what it was, and I want people to see what it is and what it can be. And so that's really why that choice of words is so important to me.
What do you think it can be?
I think we are the most incredible at creating innovative product. To me, disruption, innovation, really pushing the boundaries of science is so important to us. I think that we can support our pro in a way that they deserve to be supported. All of our partners, that was really important to me. I also think we can create a brand that showcases that there isn't necessarily, if you have great science, it doesn't mean you give up on all the emotional payoff of this wonderful category that we're all a part of.
Talk to me about a little bit, because we don't have that much time, about that emotion, because hair arguably is the most emotional category. I mean, skincare too, I mean, in a different way. But, you know, that's why good hair days exist. That's why bad hair days exist. And I mean, I'm just wondering, you know, putting so much emphasis on the pro and also the customer, are they feeling more connected to the brand? Are you seeing that in the stages of transformation?
Yeah, we're seeing some early green shoots, and we've certainly seen that we're able to, you know, again, this gets back to having the scale and the platform, and that we've seen some really great receptivity to everything we do. I mean, it is certainly a humbling experience to be in the background and then have this brand that a lot of people know, and then to put out a new look and feel, and what's the response going to be? And it's been terrific. I think our partners have been really enthusiastic. Our pros have been really enthusiastic. And the best message that I've gotten is, you know, this feels like Olaplex. And that means that we're really onto the right thing.
Thank you so much, Amanda. It was great having you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We're getting down to the end of our second session, and we have a great speaker up next. Too many beauty executives use the buzzword community, as we just heard a second ago, as a catch-all for investors and retailers. So much so that the word community is losing its meaning. But actually creating a community means giving space for people to celebrate their differences and their similarities, and create an environment where customers become companies' most important sounding board. Tracee Ellis Ross, the multi-hyphenate actress and producer, has done just that with her change-making hair care brand, Pattern Beauty. Please welcome her to the Global Forum stage with BOF's founder and CEO, Imran Ahmed. Thank you. So happy. Thank you.
How you guys holding up?
All right.
All right.
All right. So
wait, can we do something first?
Yes, what's that?
Can I ask, can we just take a deep breath for humanity in Los Angeles right now? Yeah. It's hard for me to shift into other things. I have a really whole sense of looking at the world. And so my heart is heavy. And if we could just take a deep breath for humanity. I'm so sorry that all of this is happening.
I want to talk a little bit about that later, because, you know, doing what you're doing, operating in this chaotic, constantly changing context, is one part of being a founder. The other part is the origin story, and that's where I want to begin. I've done a lot of reading, and you and I have chatted about Pattern before, but I think it's really important to go back to the early formative experiences of having your hair done growing up. Can you tell us some of those stories? Because I found them so powerful and moving as a way for where this brand was first germinating.
Yeah, I feel like I could chronicle my journey of hair with my journey of self-acceptance. The way my hair grows out of my head was mirrored back to me in my family, but not necessarily culturally. And so making sense of, as a young girl, how my hair grew out of my head was great. I didn't think about it. But you start entering high school and those years, and it's different than the people I went to school with. It's different than the newscasters. I mean, we take it for granted now, but newscasters, like people on TV did not have natural hair. I mean, I could name on my hand the women that were wearing their hair in its natural texture. And so even though my mom, in her own right, was wearing her hair in its natural texture, I don't care who your mom is. When you're a teenager, you're not trying to look like your mom. And so trying to figure out and master and understand and gain a sense of love and celebration in my hair was difficult to navigate and find. And so some of my early memories, I mean, honestly, we would go to my grandmother's in Detroit for Christmas and for the summer or whatever it was, and all the cousins would be lined up outside of my grandma's nice bathroom downstairs. And she would put mayonnaise in our hair. Because it was a deep conditioning treatment. And we would all joke that we would smell like sandwiches for the rest of the week. And she would line us up in front of the bathroom, boys, girls, all of us, and we would lay on the sink, and she would wash our hair in the sink and condition us with mayonnaise. I would go to a salon as I got older, and on Saturdays I would go for the never-ending journey of getting my hair washed, roller set, sit under the dryer for 45 minutes to an hour, then wait for the good salon guy Joe, who would blow our hair out, and then I would try and make that work for the rest of the week. And then as I moved into high school, I started to gain this understanding of my hair. I started to gain a relationship with my hair. I started to experiment with everything. I don't know what age I was, but my mother came in my room and she was like, listen here, little girl, you're gonna either need to get a really rich husband or a really good job so that I can handle these hair products. And I was like, Mom, my hair is dead, like I need these. And so instead, I don't have a husband, but I built a beauty company. Yeah, that's right. But so through all those years, I was gaining this experiential knowledge. And little did I know I was not alone, that the hair products that my mother and my aunt and my grandmother were choosing from, that shelf space was the same for me that it was for them.
It hadn't changed.
It had not changed. I don't need to name the products, but I mean, you know, hair food, pink lotion. I mean, we can go on. But they were the same products. My mom was like, there is shampoo, conditioner combined. We all know what that product was. In your shower with a rubber brush. That's what you've got. Like, get it together and make it work. And so I started experimenting with everything. I put beer in my hair. I had ironed my hair with an actual clothing iron.
I had friends who did that too.
Yeah, I put Kerry lotion in my hair because it was hydrating. I had tried everything. I used to wake up in the morning and dial 1212-777-1212, and it would say at the tone the time will be, and the percent and the temperature, and then the percentage of humidity. If the humidity was over 73%, I wouldn't wash my hair. So I was learning that wherever I went, whether the texture of the water was different, the products that I was using would change the way my hair looked. And to wear my hair naturally, there weren't a series of products that existed to help me do that. And so I remember dreaming at that time and thinking, God, wouldn't it be nice if like I could have like all the same products, like not like a smorgasbord of other things, but like beautiful products on my counter that worked for me. And so little did I know I was beginning my entrepreneurial, my business building, experiential knowledge to put together what became my brand Bible before I even met my partners. And it really was that I realized that I was not the only one that was not being mirrored back, that beauty and black beauty and textured hair was not being mirrored back as a celebration, but instead it was a problem. That it was not being mirrored back as a sense of joy and a sense of beauty and a sense of power and a sense of history and a sense of legacy and a sense of culture and a sense of selfhood. And so that was what I started to dream of. And I came at this as a shopper.
Yeah.
You know, I was just a beauty shopper and a shopper. And this idea that people don't, that you have this idea of marketing that you have to make you feel bad in order to buy things. I buy the most when I feel good. Like when I feel empowered in my skin, that's when I want to go out and buy things.
So let's talk about that for a minute, because at that stage in your youth, when you stopped relaxing your hair and putting it through all of the
the rigmarole.
We were just hearing right now about how important a category hair is, about the good hair day. So what was the transformation that happened inside of you when you started accepting and celebrating your hair naturally?
It came from knowledge. It came from knowing myself, and it came from finding the right products. And so it happened when I came, so I went to boarding school in Switzerland in 8th and 9th grade, and I didn't have access to my mom, who could do my hair. I didn't have access to the salon, and there was no one but me that could do it. And so I started to really, I mean, my hair was dead. Like, it was just, it was, you know, you could look at it and see the little white bits on the end.
Yeah.
Like, it was just fried and dyed and all of it. And so I came home and I was a track runner, and I had to figure out how to condition my hair. And so it sort of became this blossoming of me. And my hair started to blossom. I started to grow out the relaxed hair. I started to wear my hair naturally. There's early pictures. It wasn't cute. I learned how to care for my hair, how to love my hair, how to accept my hair, how to know my hair. And that was the beginning of, and what is Pattern. It is, you know, to allow people to have the access to their most beautiful hair, their most beautiful self, their most conditioned self in their own bathroom or someone else's. As opposed to having to always trust a professional. Even if you wear lace fronts or braided styles or whatever, that in the privacy and the intimacy of your own home, in your shower, on your wash day, in between hairstyles, when you remove your wig, you have a sense of empowered relationship to your own hair.
So while the idea of Pattern is still ruminating, you move into what you're most known for is your career. And at the time when you moved into Hollywood, you were talking about the news anchors on television just now, but Hollywood was the same. I mean, there weren't that many people who were wearing their hair naturally.
I'll tell you, so on Girlfriends, so when Girlfriends was on the air, 2000 to 2010, there was no social media. And we went to the Essence Music Festival, and I was the one of the 4 girlfriends who wore her hair naturally. Persia wore her hair natural-ish as we started to progress through the years. And I remember going to the Essence Music Festival, and this woman said to me, she was like, "Listen, honey, you're on television, you're representing us. The least you can do is put some heat on your hair." And I was like, what do you mean? And she was like, I mean, come on, girl. And I said, this is how it grows out of my head. Like, God gave it to me this way. I think it's fine. And that was, part of the journey is really a sense of joy in expressing yourself in that way. And allowing that, I mean, even now I'm inspired. Like, I watched Solange and some of these other girls coming up at the beginning of their career, wearing their hair in all these natural forms. I used to say, like, I had my movie star hair was with heat. And then I remember on Girlfriends really claiming in sexy scenes that I was gonna wear my hair braided or natural texture. I wasn't gonna put heat on it. I could do all different kinds of styles, but that I was going to make an actual choice to be in a sexy scene with my hair in its natural texture and start to change that narrative around what textured hair means and how sexy looks. And so it was after Girlfriends that I wrote my first hair care brand pitch. And what existed, and first of all, I was coming from Hollywood, so, and I'll tell you something else that's very funny that I like to say, like C-suite, the whole C-suite thing, I didn't understand what that meant. This is how much of not business school I went to or understood. I don't have corporate people in my family. There's doctors over there, but like the product that is being sold in the world I live in is your creativity and your soul and your voice, So the C-suite, I was like, I don't understand. Why would you want to be in the C-suite? Don't you want to be in the A-suite? Like, I just didn't understand. I was like, you want to be A, right? Not C? So I really didn't understand any of that, but I knew that and the expression white space drives me crazy. There was a void, and there was this gap that existed that was not just me as the customer looking for that thing, but there were so many people that I had had access to on Girlfriends. But again, no social media. So I wrote my first hair care brand pitch, but basically it was a treatment for a TV show. Like, I knew how to write a one-pager for a TV show, but everything that was on that one-pager is what became the initial list of 6-7 SKUs that we started with.
Okay, so let's talk about the creation of Pattern, because for any founder, taking something from an idea or a concept into actuality is challenging.
Yeah.
You are also a very busy, active woman in a completely different career. How did you create Pattern while continuing your, how you made your day job effectively?
I mean, the truth is, so the myth that I was like this famous actress who had lots of money to start a company is like garbage. I'm a black actress in Hollywood. Let's be clear about my finances, okay? So it wasn't that, and I had been told, someone told me like, don't use your own money. So I was like, okay, but I didn't even know what that meant anyway. I didn't know how to make goop. So my journey was actually interesting. It was 10 years in the making. It was a lot of no's. It was a lot of why you? Why don't you partner with a professional? And I attempted to really explain that the experiential knowledge of people with textured hair, that we have learned to be our own best experts. That mostly stylists had actually gotten my hair in trouble. They were not the people that taught me how to wear my hair naturally. The history of my family, the legacy of my life, and others is how, and my own trial and error is how I discovered what worked for my hair. And so I was trying to explain this to people and really trying to shift my language to explain something that I felt was unexplainable to a certain extent, because there's this myth around, there's so many hair products, I don't understand why we need another one. And I'm like, because they don't exist in this area. And so I just started going in the direction that I knew how to go. And I tried all these different versions of things. We don't have much time to talk, so I don't want to go into, I'm trying to think of one or two of the interesting stories. My favorite was attempting to, I wrote this hair care brand pitch, and somebody read it and said, why don't you do a line of wigs? I was like, I think you've misunderstood. And they were like, well, no one can have your hair. And I was like, no, I don't want anybody to have my hair. I want people to have their hair. And the point is that they need the right products to support their hair. And that's what doesn't exist. And so I went into a store, and this was the beginning of me thinking I could make a brand, I was in a beauty supply shop, and they have the salon in the back, and the guy said, you have no idea the amount of people that come in here and say they want your hair. And I tell them I'm gonna sew it in. And I'm like, no. They just need the right products. And he said, well, if you make a line of products, you'll be a millionaire. And now I'm like, why don't I become a billionaire? So the process was a lot of no's, and where I ended up was I met with retail partners first. So I met with 2 retail partners, and I brought them my idea.
And is this just you solo at this point?
Yeah, with my Hollywood agents.
Wow, okay. All right.
Just trudging through. And in these 10 years, all these different versions of no's that I got, I decided to take an ambassadorship with a large brand in hair care, thinking that I could make a deal that would get them to create a line for me, because I had seen that in fashion people do diffusion lines. And I was like, maybe I could do a diffusion line under a larger brand. And that didn't work. And I ended up excusing myself from that and taking my money off the table, which was a scary thing for me to do. But I was like, this is not walking me where I want to go. I didn't want to continue to tell my hair story without having a reason to be telling it. There was something on the other end. And so I went to these 2 retail partners. One flew to LA to me, the other I flew to, and I brought my idea, and on that, they wanted it. And then came the journey of how do I operationally run a business when I have a day job.
Why did they want it? Because you've told me in the past before that a lot of the people you met with said that the textured hair care market is niche. You've also said that this is not a celebrity brand. This is a brand about community. So what were you able to say to those prospective retail partners that bought into your vision of this being made for textured hair and built around community, not around your celebrity?
Non-white customers are always underestimated and not always understood. So I came with the expression of this community needs to be supported. And the paradigm of how products are marketed to this community is based on you have a problem that needs to be fixed. And I don't believe, particularly in the paradigm of a Black customer, that that is helpful or productive or effective or lucrative. However, if you come from the place of supporting and celebrating the joy, the beauty, and the power of who this customer is, you actually have an opportunity to take all that wasted space that is not being served for this customer and turn that into money and purpose and value. And so I started with my own routine. This is what I do, and I want to be clear that I want this to service the full breadth of this massive community and not just me. And so that was where we began. And it was about discovering, and then the question was, how operationally do you do that?
Yeah.
And so I had those retail partners suggest to me different business partners that I could work with. I tried the avenue where I was going to do it myself, and I realized I have a day job, and this is also not my expertise. And as a business builder, one of the things I've discovered is the best thing you can do is not think you know everything. Ask for the help where you need it. Go to the people that have that experience. That's why I ended up bringing in a co-CEO. We were scaling at a pace and at a rate and moving into areas that were out of my expertise, and I needed the support of somebody who actually knew how to do that while I could keep my focus properly on being a guardian of the vision of the brand, creating the culture internally in our organization, and also being out in the public talking about it in a way that matched the vision of the brand, making sure that everyone that we hired, it was like mission critical that everybody, not just the legacy talent that we have, really understands the mission and the ethos of the brand and is passionate about it in that way. And so, and the retail partner that I started with, Ulta, Mary Dillon was the CEO at the time, and she has been a very instrumental person in my career and my journey as a business builder, mirroring back to me the truth of my intelligence as a business person and not treating me as a celebrity. And 2019 is when, right before the pandemic, is when we launched. So we're a mobile first brand and a digital first brand, but now we are, omni-channel. We have 11 retail partners, and we, it's a big company now.
So talk to us, in that 5 or 6 year period since you've launched, you've hired a co-CEO, you've scaled the team. Give us a sense of where you've gone from those 7 initial SKUs back then to what it is today, the number of employees and the scale of the business that we're talking about.
Well, in the last year, we've grown 25%. Brand awareness is really our focus right now. And from December 2023, we're up 30% in brand awareness, and that's an area of great growth for us, which is such an opportunity for us as a brand to know that it's that people just need to know about the brand, and once they try it, the efficacy brings people back. That, I don't know what you call that, some word that you learn in business school. People come back.
I don't even know.
Great. So
I went to business school and I don't know what you're talking about.
I don't know. Anyway. With the people that come back, they come back all the time. You know what I mean?
Repeat customers.
Yeah! Repeat customers, they come back. You know what I mean?
Doesn't have to be jargon.
Yeah.
It could just be.
Once you buy it, once you use it, you come back and you want more.
Yeah.
That's what's happening at Pattern.
Okay.
No. So part of what's happened is, we were a startup company, and 6 years in, startup means everybody wears a whole bunch of hats, and you're scrappy, and everybody does everything. But as you get bigger, that does not function well. And so we're limiting the hats for people so that they can do what they do.
Specialization, we call it in business school.
People are doing more specialized things. What they were hired to do, they do. Yes? And they do it with great depth and intelligence, as opposed to, what do you need?
Yeah.
Right? When does it have to be in? So now people are doing those things. So there's a lot more. This is a big word. Corporate Kathy uses this one, cross-functional. Yeah. I do a lot of cross-functional meetings now with all the team and the leadership group, right? I sit with the leadership group. Now, so there's a lot more depth and focus so that we can be much more efficient in what we're doing, and so that we can, and also so that I can continue having my career. I will say, people are like, how many hours out of a week are you working with Pattern?
I asked you last night.
I'm like 85% of the week. How many hours of the week are you working on the rest of your career? Oh, I don't know, about 110. So, I don't sleep much, but
you didn't go to business school because that doesn't add up to 100.
No, I don't do math. That's what Christiane's for. She does the math, I do the feeling. So like product development, marketing, all the creative, all the packaging, the language, and all of that kind of stuff, that is under my purview. I mean, everything from writing our onboarding document and making sure that that is a reflection of our soul and who we are as a brand and what I built and what my baby is. That, my hands are in all of that. I love it so much. And the growth and the new challenges that arise are so exciting to me. And I went to Brown. I'm really smart. I'm 52. I'm a grown-up. I get to use all that I am, you know, and it's a fascinating thing. They don't like actors to be smart. I don't know if you know this. They would much prefer we just show up on our mark and look pretty, and then give the feeling and they don't know where it comes from. As a business person, I get to be as smart as I am. I get to own that. And someone like Mary Dillon, for example, she was one of the people that gave me the confidence to believe in what I have, not what I have to go get. And so much of what I have is, and you know, this thing of like, I know my customer. I am the customer, but I still don't. What we do at Pattern, we are grounded in our community. And I much prefer calling our community instead of the customer. We are grounded in our community, and we do that we listen in all ways. We listen digitally, we listen social media-wise, and go into mining into those comments, and then having conversations and dialogue in DM. We then, in real life, have all of these extraordinary events that is a conversation back with our customer. And so much of our product development is born out of that. Cocktailing is our new sort of launchification that's happening right now, because it's something that our community has been doing forever. And the products, I built them, and that's not the right word, but whatever. I formulated. Yes. Menopause did not get me. I formulated these products so that all of our styling products could be mixed together without flaking and pilling, either by layering them in your hair or by mixing them in your hand, which is the way our community uses them. And so we have an entire launch happening around cocktailing. How do you cocktail? What are you cocktailing? And putting that together in that way, and that's been a really fun. Are they telling you we have to stop?
No,
I don't want to stop talking.
I think we need to go for a few more minutes because there's a few more important things I want to discuss with you now that we finished the business school phase, because we had a very interesting diversion last night.
Yeah.
And we were talking about, you know, even with your position, even with your fame, even with a successful, you know, business that's growing and a very impressive team, there are still systemic issues in the way this industry works. We were talking last night about, I wrote it down, instrumental tool testing. Can you talk about that? Because that blew my mind.
It blew my mind too. So these are some of the roadblocks and barriers that we run into all the time. I brought this because this was a report the team gave back to me in October 2024. And so as we are doing, so instrumental testing or just consumer testing or product testing that we do, my hair's so long, it's just like in the way, sorry. In order to get those things that come up on your brand, this is my learning, right? Like 4 times the moisture, or detangling 10 times more, less breakage, or 3 times more less breakage, whatever those things are, it comes from somewhere. So there's tests that have to be done. And there's instrumental testing that's done, which is basically instruments that are used to test the hair to determine what the efficacy of that product is. The word efficacy was one of my favorite words I learned when I was originally designing and formulating the Goop, because I ended up working with manufacturers that were in Los Angeles so I could have face-to-face, in-person dialogue with them, because in order to explain that the efficacy of a product being determined on straight, non-textured hair was not a way to determine if a product was efficacious or not. And so I wanted to have dialogue, because I'm not in product development and trained that way, to actually talk about what it was that I was experiencing so that I could express that to the manufacturers and the chemists. When we were testing products in the beginning, I would take videos and I would get out of 75 samples I tried for our first 7 SKUs, and I would get out of the shower like 4 times to make videos so that I could say what it was I was trying to say without having the knowledge of a chemist. So as we're doing these this testing recently, 2024, on new products and trying to gain new information as we're launching things. One of the things that was determined, and I wanted to read just from the report so it's not like my my version. But so alternative methods to exist, the proposal that okay. So the testing labs had sort of eliminated testing type 4 hair altogether.
And what is type 4 hair?
So there's categorizations with textured hair, with hair in general. There's, and 3B to 4C are tighter textured hair. So Pattern meets the needs of the curly, coily, and tight textured hair. We could have given you the numbers. Most people don't even know their own number, but from the industry standard, those numbers categorize your hair type and how tight your texture is. So the tighter textured hair, they had just stopped testing because the instruments weren't working on them. Doesn't that make you snag a little?
So when Tracy told me this last night, it reminded me of when I learned about how they created film photography initially only for certain kinds of skin. It's the same thing. It's like systemic things inside the industries that are so culturally important that limit our ability to say like, well, this is also good for other kinds of hair or other kinds of skin.
Correct. And the customer doesn't know this is happening. And so, for example, it says, we specifically ask that all tests be conducted on type 2 and type 4 hair to ensure that the product worked across all different hair types. And Christiane and I, in the meeting, I was like, hold on. We need to go back to that company and say, you've got to figure this out. Like, you have to figure out how to be able to test all types of hair. And so, I want to read, okay. So ease of combing, for example, is a common industry instrumental testing method to determine how well a product conditions the hair. The easier that a comb or brush can pass through the hair with minimal snagging, tangling, or friction means that it's more conditioned. The product being evaluated is applied to hairdressers alongside a control of untreated hair, and that's how it's tested. Dry combing was only offered to hair types 1 and 3. Type 4 hair was eliminated due to the difficulty of managing the hair. Get out of here. Get out of here. Now, if I was not in meetings and didn't hear that, that's a dialogue that's not going to come up. Our head of PD, Nikita, went back and she's worked with them. They had determined that there was no clear way to effectively test the products on 4 hair. So now we have silicone fingers that measure the force used to mimic a consumer running their fingers through their hair, which is more in line with our core consumer behavior. And the fine tooth comb is replaced with a wide tooth comb, and hair is lightly misted throughout the test to prevent it. And basically, where's the part where it says, the testing laboratory, the outcome. The testing laboratory now offers our solutions as a standard method for testing textured hair. I mean,
but see, this is...
And these things come up in so many different areas and in different ways that we don't realize. And if you're not in that dialogue and don't have the courage, which I learned as an actress, to say, hold on, can we talk about that?
Yeah, no, I think that's really important because as we learned with some of our awards nominees, like the people who are really changing the industry from the inside, those are the ones that we really have our eye on. And Tracy, you've really done that. It's not just a brand at the surface. It's not just a kind of pet project. This is something where you're actually changing the way the industry works and the way hair is tested, which is really incredible. We are 12 minutes over, but I have one more question for you because we opened the session with that deep breath. And as someone who is navigating building a business in this environment where it feels like every hour there's something else disruptive happening that's changing the context in which we work, what advice do you have to offer to people here around how you navigate all that change and how it's emotional? You said it feels heavy. How do you get through that?
Well, I believe in a sense of wholeness. Wellness can be challenging at times to me because it has the connotation that you have to be well. And the reality is sometimes I don't feel well. But what I want to do is make space for my whole self, for the parts of me that are afraid, for the parts of me that feel hurt, for the parts of me that are confused, that don't know. And I think that's really what Pattern is built on. And I think it's at the core of a really strong business. The idea that you can't build a business of purpose and do something with purpose in your life with your eyes closed and your heart closed. Having those things, having your world be a part of what you make, I think is incredibly important.
But how do you do that when, DEI is being rolled back? Even using the words diversity, inclusivity, all of that has become this, it's become taboo. Like, people are literally erasing it from their websites.
Well, it's becoming illegal.
Yeah.
Well, you can't erase me. I can't erase you. I can't erase you. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. You can't tell me as a Black woman that I am not as smart, as powerful, and as important as I am. I don't care what words you use. And I think that this is a time for us to remember that we are as strong as the most vulnerable among us. I am as whole and as free as you are. And we are inextricably tied to each other. And I am grateful for that. That, to me, is where the best of life comes from. And so I think whether it's building a business, living a life, being a parent, being a friend, whatever that is, as we as human beings remember our humanity, we are all better off. And to me, the diversity of our humanity is what makes our world great. And in all honesty, it's also really good business.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was amazing. I knew it would be. I mean, we could keep talking for another 20 minutes, but we have lunch.
We have lunch, but can I say this? So last night I had the honor at dinner of hearing your story. And I've known you for a while, and I've sat with you at dinners, and I've done things by your side, and we know the work that you do. But your journey is really inspirational and quite beautiful. And so I encourage, at some point, perhaps I can sit on a stage and interview you.
Oh, I would love that. Thank you.
Because
Thank
really,
you. Thank
and you do so much for all of us.
Thank you so much. That marks the end of session 2. Thank you to all of our speakers for sharing their insights. You can expect more of that in our third and final session, where we will explore connection in the age of disruption. After a short break and lunch for everyone here on the ranch, we'll hear from many more powerful voices, including Haley Rode-Bieber, Sydney Tao, and Yasmin Soul. To all of our BOF professional members watching online, see you back here this afternoon at 2:30 p.m. California time, 5:30 p.m. New York time. And for those of you watching late at night, and I see some of you on Instagram are doing that, that's 10:30 p.m. in London, 11:30 p.m. in Paris, and 6:30 a.m. in Seoul and Tokyo. Thanks again and for joining us, and see you all very soon.